Hey y'all, thanks for stopping by tonight. If you notice, I'm flying solo. I don't have my little compadre over here beside me. He had some prior engagements tonight. But just to let you know, starting on January the 20th, from 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to be doing a live every week. So mark that down on your calendars, January the 20th. 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard, we're going to be doing a live with me, my little buddy Such, who you can see over here. He's like, look real close, you can see him. He's like right here. So, yeah, I'm like petting him, right? He's going to be here starting on the 20th of January with us, and we'll be doing a live every week going forward from there and talking about a bunch of different subjects, firearms related, prepping related, and a bunch of other stuff. So just wanted to let you know about that so you guys know when we're going to be doing our next live. Next week, we will not have a live. My boys have some days off from school, and I'm going to be spending some time with the family that week, and I won't have a live that week. I promise you I will be missing all of you, but, I have to make sure that I spend time with my family as well. So let's kind of jump right into this and talk about some gunsmithing related questions. And my first question that I had is from going against the grain. And you have to forgive me, everybody has abandoned me tonight. My oldest little boy had some football practice tonight. My wife took him to that. My buddy Such, which y'all can see right here, he's look real close, you can see him. He had some things to do tonight, so it's just me. I'm flying solo, so I'm having to do the camera and the computer and everything, so be a little patient with me. But going against the grain, he said, yes, this is a little personal, but how many years did it take you to become so involved with firearms and accumulate all that knowledge? Don always jokes, I'm like the encyclopedia of gun knowledge, volume 2022. He says he's taking some blacksmithing courses now. And I tell you, bud, I truly started studying and learning about firearms when I was about 5 years old. And that's no exaggeration. I started with the JCPenney Fall and Winter Catalog. And for those of y'all that are my age, I'm kind of telling my age a little bit now. But for those of y'all that were my age, you remember the JCPenney Fall and Winter Catalog. There was a toy section, there was a gun section, and then there was Mama's clothes section, right? Well, the firearms section in the Fall and Winter Catalog was the start of my obsession with firearms. And so I started looking at the Fall and Winter Catalog, and I would mark through the things that I wanted, the things that I didn't want. And then I would start looking at, my parents would buy me gun magazines and stuff. We'd go to the grocery store on Mondays or Tuesdays, get groceries for the week. And I would stop by the magazine counter at that time. And I would pick out a Guns and Ammo magazine or Outdoor Life was a big one for me as well. But I would pick out one of those two magazines when I would go to the store, and I'd get that magazine. I'd go home and I would read it literally cover to cover. And, that was really the beginning for me for learning about firearms, what they were, the different types of firearms, how they worked. And as I got older, I really started digging into more in-depth books that really taught about the history of firearms, the manufacturer, the design, and that side of firearms. But for me, the beginning for firearms was the JCPenney Fall and Winter Catalog. And, I'll always be thankful for JCPenney for selling firearms back then. That was, today that would be taboo for a mall to sell guns, right? But, back in the late 70s and early 80s when I was a little guy, that was very popular, and it was common for, most of your stores sold firearms. Your malls sold firearms, your hardware stores, all of your big box stores. You could pretty much go anywhere that you wanted and buy firearms and ammunition, which is not so much the case now with our woke society that we live in. Just so you guys know, my pronoun for tonight is gun, right? Just a joke for you. But for going against the grain, I really started at a very, very young age learning about firearms and studying firearms. And by the time I was 10 years old or so, I was taking firearms apart. My dad, he used to buy me old guns that were just beat up and abused. And he'd bring them home to me. I would disassemble them, clean them and everything, he would send them off and have them refinished for me and have them brought back home, and then I would reassemble everything. And that was truly the beginning of my experience, my journey with really learning how to work on guns from a very, very young age. And I had kind of a break from about 14 to 20 years old working on guns. I had a great opportunity when I was about 14 years old to intern with an Italian gunsmith in our area that built custom firearms, custom shotguns and stuff. And he built some amazing firearms. And my mom ixnayed it. She was like, nope, he's not going down that path. He's not working for somebody building guns. My mom's not anti-gun, but she's scared of guns. She's never shot them a whole lot, and she's always just been kind of scared of them. And she squashed that really quickly. Wouldn't let me intern with this guy. And, that was really kind of an opportunity of a lifetime for me to intern with like a fifth generation Italian gunsmith. And I missed that opportunity. And I ended up going a different route. From 14 to about 20 years old, I built racing engines for racing go-karts, and really learned a lot about machining. I couldn't work on guns, but she was okay with me going to a machine shop and interning with machinists and working with machinists, which was kind of cool. So I spent about 5 or 6 years through high school and before I went in the Marine Corps building racing engines and learning a lot about tolerances and really close dimensions and stuff, how to set tolerances and set different machines up, set different fixtures up, build my own fixtures and things like that, which later on in life has became, a really big benefit for me with working on firearms, because it's kind of one and the same. A tolerance is a tolerance. If I'm setting a close tolerance on a slide and frame for a 1911 or locking lugs on a 1911 versus setting the ring end gap or the cylinder to a piston gap on a racing engine, it's all about the same. It's all just tolerances. But so even though I missed out on working with a really brilliant Italian gun maker in my teenage years, I was able to kind of offset that by working in a machine shop with some great machinists. And, these guys had been building racing engines longer at that point than I had been alive, 20, 30 years building racing engines. And they truly understood everything about building racing engines. And they took a liking to me and really poured into me how to do things and how to do things the right way when building an engine, which with firearms is translated over to that, the attention to detail and all the little things that go into building a firearm. There's a lot of little things with building a firearm that, there's a lot of gunsmiths. Everybody that's got a Dremel's a gunsmith, right? And one of the things that I learned very early on is a lot of people can do something, but very few people can do something very well. And that was one of the things that I wanted to really learn how to do growing up, was how to do one thing and do that one thing very well. When I was younger, it was racing engines. As I got older, it turned into my passion with firearms. When I got started in competitive shooting, I couldn't buy a firearm that really ran reliably and was accurate like I wanted. So I started building my own. And all of my experience from working in the machine shops growing up, it translated right over into building firearms and allowed me to build a really accurate 1911 that I was able to compete with. The firearm allowed me to be very accurate and precise and have a reliable firearm that I could compete with. And the only limitation at that point was my ability or inability to shoot fast and accurately, and which I put a lot of time and years into developing that skill as well through USPSA and then later on into 3-gun. But it was a great learning opportunity for me, building my own firearms for competition. My friends saw my firearms that I built. Everything worked really well. I started building guns for them. And then, over the course of a few years, it turned from a hobby building my own guns to building my friends' guns, to building their friends' guns, and from a hobby into a profession. But it's really been my life's work, working on firearms. I enjoy firearms. I enjoy the firearm design, especially for me at this point in my life. I'm pushing 50 now. The design aspect of it. I enjoy designing new things that are different that no one else has. And that was why my interview last week with Fred Craig was so enjoyable for me. I got to sit down and talk to someone that I absolutely looked up to when I was younger. Fred was an incredible designer and firearms manufacturer, and has worked for some great companies over the years. And now he's back to building his own stuff again. And it's great to talk to someone that's a genius in the firearms community, just a incredible brain. And I would never compare myself to somebody like him, but that's a goal that I aspire to be, is somebody that is just an incredible designer when it comes to firearms, and coming up with something that is new and unique and that is my own, that's no one else's. And so that's been an incredible journey. I enjoy working on firearms every day. I get up in the morning and I'm like, I'm truly blessed to get to sit down and work on different firearms, different firearm designs. And there's the majority of firearms that are on the market I've either worked on or done custom work to, and I really understand. I have a deep understanding of how different firearms work. A lot of people see a gun and they're like, okay, that's semi-automatic, or that's a revolver, or a striker-fired pistol, or hammer-fired pistol. But there's once you really dig into them, there's so much commonality between firearms from one manufacturer to the next. They're all pretty much the same internally. Once you really have worked on, I don't know, 100,000 guns or something, they all kind of look the same inside. So it's neat seeing different and unique designs like the Rock Island Armory 5.0. That's a very unique design, something that's completely different than has ever been released in the firearms industry. The Canik SFX-S, all steel lower, all steel upper, and just the design of the frame and how everything's put together. It's one of the few striker-fired pistols that's on the market that's an all-steel pistol. It's an incredible design, great shooting pistol. But I enjoy seeing innovation in our industry, whether it's from myself or other designers or other companies. I just enjoy seeing innovation in our industry. And, innovation leads to great firearms for the end user or the customer. But, just to give you guys kind of a backstory about me, and, maybe something that you didn't know, a few things you didn't know about myself, just kind of where I got started and how I kind of grew into this industry. And I've worked with a lot of great companies. I have shot competitively for a lot of great companies. I've been a consultant for a lot of great companies with products and product designs, with stuff that they're thinking about developing, or giving them ideas for new products to develop, to release to the industry. And, now I pretty much do everything on my own with Wheaton Arms, and a lot of design and development, new products and stuff from our end, and a little bit less of developing products for other companies now. But I do still do some consulting for other companies as far as helping them develop new products and things as well. Let's kind of jump into the questions and see what else we've got here. And sorry for having to look down here, guys, but I'm having to run the computer myself. So I've got a comment here from IB Positive. Mostly, I have a P80 just completed and it didn't go into battery after the first round. Any ideas? First question would be, what kind of P80? Is it an AR-15? Is it a Glock style pistol? I'm guessing P80, you're talking about a Glock style pistol. With the Glock style pistols, if it's not going completely into battery, more than likely you're going to have to open up the channel where your guide rod and everything runs. You've got some stuff that's binding up in there. Shoot me a comment in here and let me know exactly what it's doing and what kind of pistol it is, and I may be able to give you a little more insight on that. MZ Hockey 12 says Such must have his cloaking device engaged. He does. You know, if you look closely, you can see him here. There's like a little shadow here up under my arm. You know, I'm hiding him under my massive bicep, but he's under there. He's under there. He's with us tonight. It may only be in spirit, but I promise you, he's with us tonight. Let's see what else we've got here. Got a question from back up a little bit. David Frost. Hey, Robbie, do you have an opinion on the 6.5 Creedmoor as an all-around good rifle for prepping and hunting and self-defense? David, I tell you, the 6.5 Creedmoor is without question my absolute favorite rifle caliber available. I have been shooting the 6.5 Creedmoor for about 4.5, maybe 5 years now. I've got a bunch of rifles built in that caliber, both for myself and for my little boys as far as hunting rifles. The 6.5 Creedmoor is absolutely outstanding for long-range ballistics and terminal ballistics on white-tailed deer, especially where we live. We've yet to have a white-tailed deer take a step after shooting one with a 6.5 Creedmoor. We use 140 grain EOD hunters from Hornady, and it absolutely anchors them right where we shoot them. I think the furthest shot that my little boys have taken is about 270 or 280 yards, and the deer just crumples up right there where you shoot him. It is an absolutely incredible cartridge. And, you know, comparing it to 308 at 1,000 yards, my 308, I got a 20-inch barreled 308 that I shoot out to 1,000 yards quite a bit. And that rifle is 13.6 to 13.8 mils of elevation, depending on atmospherics the day that I'm at the range, for a center shot at 1,000 yards. My 6.5 Creedmoor at 1,000 yards is 7.2 to 7.4 mils. So it is almost 50% more, less drop at 1,000 yards than my equivalent 308. And both of those are running some of my hand loads, 168 grain versus 140 grain. But it is an incredibly flat shooting projectile. It's an incredibly hard hitting projectile. It does a tremendous job on white-tailed deer. And our deer here in South Carolina are a little smaller than a lot of the country. You know, average deer here is probably 150, 160 pounds, but it just anchors them. They're down as soon as you hit them. The 308, you know, I've hunted with a 308 for years, and it was funny. My little guy and I, we were hunting a couple of years ago, and on Friday he shoots a nice little buck, his first deer. It was like a 7-pointer with a 6.5 Creedmoor, and it just crumples right where he shoots it. So we go and get the deer, we drag it, we take it to the processor and everything. And the next day we're hunting the same stand, and we had another deer walk out that was pretty close in body size. The rack was a little smaller, but pretty close in body size. And the deer comes across in almost, I'm within 5 yards of the same spot that he shot his deer. And I shot it with my 308 with 168 grain hollow point boat tail. And the deer just disappears. And we spent 45 minutes blood trailing this deer and found it about almost 100 yards away. But it was just the difference in, you know, same point of impact. We both shot the deer almost in the exact same place, but the 6.5 Creedmoor just seems to transfer so much more energy into a target than the 308. The 308 just doesn't seem to be nearly as effective and drops off so much more after 500 yards. So yeah, you know, if I was you, there's the 6.5 Creedmoor is absolutely a must-have cartridge for me. If you've only got a 308 and you're looking to upgrade to a different caliber or replace the 308 with something else, the 6.5 Creedmoor is absolutely a great caliber to replace your 308 with. Let's see what else we've got here. MZ Hockey 12 says, "You were still just a pup, LOL." Yeah, I'm pushing 50. I'm trying to do the best that I can, for an old man. And I know that some of you guys have commented on here that you've noticed that I've lost some weight, and I've lost quite a bit of weight in the last 6 months or so. I'm down to about 235 pounds this morning. My wife and I, we've been hitting the gym regularly. I go hiking once or twice a week and trying to hike anywhere from 6 to 10 miles once or twice a week. And just really trying to focus more on my personal health this year. And not just this year, but here going forward. I'm in the back half of my life now. And, I'm really trying to be conscious of how I treat my body going forward. The first half of my life, when my teen years, my early 20s, up into my 30s, I played pretty hard, and with the Marine Corps and then with racing, and I've just been pretty abusive to my body, from racing go-karts to motocross and Marine Corps. It's taken its toll on me. So I get up in the mornings and I'm sitting on the edge of the bed and I stretch for several minutes before I ever get up, just to kind of loosen things up. But I'm really trying to make it a point to be more health conscious with my life going forward, with what I eat and what I drink, and then with exercising and everything. I've really cut down on. I've cut out basically everything that's processed. If it comes in a bag or a can or a bottle, I don't eat it or drink it. If it's got processed sugars in it, and I know this is like blasphemy for some of y'all, but I live in the South, right? South Carolina. I have cut out my sweet tea altogether. No sweet tea for me. No sodas or anything. If it has processed sugar in it, I've cut it out of my diet altogether. And I'm telling you, for you guys out there, if you're looking to lose weight and get yourself in better shape, one of the biggest things that you can do is cut out processed sugars. The black coffee or coffee with sugar in it, sweet tea, all of the sodas, all of the drinks that have sugar in it. Cut that stuff out. Any of your, basically, my wife and I were joking the other day, and I was like, if you stop in a gas station to get anything other than gas, it's not good for you, right? So anything that you would buy at a gas station, all your snacks, your snack cakes, your drinks and stuff like that, if you cut that stuff out, you will notice a weight loss in just a month, okay? So I am living proof of it. Just cutting out stuff from the gas station, you will lose weight. Let's see what else we got here. Semper Gumby channel. Face blue smiling. Hey, Robbie, I picked up a couple of PSA daggers where your match barrels and triggers work with a dagger. So what we found with the daggers, our barrels work great with the daggers. There's some of the daggers that the trigger bar will rub on the frame at the very back of the trigger bar on the left corner, and you have to take a file and relieve that corner. I'm going to be doing a video on that in the next week or so, highlighting that area where, if the trigger bar is binding, where you need to file. But apparently the first daggers they released, our triggers work great in them. With some of the newer models that they've released, we've had an issue with our trigger bars rubbing in the corner. So I'm going to do a video on that in the next week or so, showing you if you have an issue where your trigger bar is rubbing and it's not popping up and resetting like it's supposed to. And this also works with some of the P80s as well. There's some of the P80s that there's some flashing in the corner where the trigger bar rubs that can cause an issue with the trigger bar rising up and re-engaging the striker. It causes the trigger bar to be really slow coming up, and it's kind of mushy as it rises up. And the slide and the striker will ride over the top of the trigger bar and not engage it at all. But I'll be doing a video on that in the next week or so, highlighting that, showing you guys where to file, how to fix that. So if you do have a pistol, a P80 or a dagger, to where your OEM trigger or aftermarket trigger, whether it's ours or somebody else's, isn't working correctly, you'll be able to file it and adjust it to where it works properly. I got a comment here from MZ Hockey 12. It says, at Chase Kelly, are you going to the gathering? At Chase Kelly and MZ Hockey 12. Just so you guys know, yes, I will be at the gathering. Not sure what days yet. I'll be announcing that in the next few weeks, but I will be at the gathering. My buddy Such right here, little guy, see him? He's right there. We'll both be at the gathering. I think he's going to be there every day. I may or may not be there every day. My youngest little boy races go-karts, and we build all of our own engines and everything together. I've been teaching him a lot about machining for the last almost 3 years now. And I say he's building all of his own engines now, doing that himself, me just kind of watching over him and watching what he's doing. But if we don't have a race, I'll be there every day. If he does have a race, then I'll be there Friday and Sunday, but I may end up missing Saturday. But we'll just have to wait and see. But I will be at the gathering. Then any of you guys that are coming to the gathering, please, if you see me, come up to me and say, hey, I'd love to be able to meet you. Let's see what else we've got here. Eddie Ramirez says, will you help me troubleshoot my AR-15? Eddie, absolutely. You can either message me on here, or you can shoot me an email with what's going on with it, Robbie at WheatonArms.com. It's Robbie at WheatonArms.com. Or you can give me a call at 864-269-1212, and I'll help you out with it, with what you've got going on, and get you dialed in to where it's working like it's supposed to. MZ Hockey 12 says, be careful, Robbie. 50 tends to push back. Let me tell you about pushing back, right? So my wife and I, my family, we went to church Sunday morning. We came home from church and we had lunch and everything. And after lunch, I told my wife, I was like, hey, let's get dressed. We're going to go hiking. And we had picked out this really nice trail and everything. It's just a few miles long that led up to a really beautiful waterfall. And so we take off. It's about a 45-minute drive from our house, and we get there and we jump out of the car and we take off. We walk and we hike out to the waterfall. And we get out to the waterfall, and it's disappointing to say the least. We come around this bend in the river, and there's a little waterfall. It's maybe like this tall, little tiny thing. And I looked at my wife and I was like, "There's got to be more, right?" And it's from that little waterfall up it's just a boulder field going up the side of this mountain, and probably a quarter mile, maybe a little more than a quarter of a mile. And I was like, you stay here. I'm going to go scout it out, see what I can find. And I take off up these boulders, and you're literally climbing up over the top of all these boulders and in between the boulders and stuff. And I get up not quite to the top, and probably 75 yards or so from the top, and I am gassed, right? So I'm leaning against this boulder, got my hand up on it, and I'm like, just a minute. I need a minute, and I'll be able to go again. Catch my breath, and I take off, and I finish up, and I get on up to the top, and it is an absolutely incredible waterfall. It's probably 100, 125 feet, just comes out of the trees and then just down this sheer rock face. And I'll be posting some videos on that on my other channel on back roads that you'll guys be able to check out in the next week or two. But just an incredible climb, incredible waterfall. But yeah, 50 years old, it starts to catch up with you. I had to pace myself for sure. Where 20 years ago, I'd just scampered over the top of all of it to the top and be like, oh man, that's nice, and then jump back down to the bottom. But yeah, the age does start to catch up with you a little bit. You notice yourself slowing down a little bit with things that you do the older that you get. Let's see what else we've got here. Got a message here from Chase Kelly. Says, Robbie, finally got my packet for a CMP 1911. The plan for my old standby of just using oil and hand care and super cleaning it up, but not messing with the finish, as I don't have a sonic cleaner or anything. Chase, I think you're right. With one of the old one of the CMP 1911s, I would detail strip that firearm down to the smallest nut bolt and screw. With the exception of, I probably wouldn't remove the grip bushings and things like that, because they can be a little aggravating. You may end up having to retap the frame and taking the plunger tube retainer off of the side, stuff like that I'd leave on. But stripping it to every little, the smallest piece you can take off of that gun, and detail cleaning everything, and then a light coat of oil and reassembling it. And, a lot of the CMP 1911s that I've seen, depending on the grade that you get, the majority of them are absolutely incredible firearms, especially from a collector standpoint. If you can get an all matching numbers gun that has a Remington frame, Remington slide, or International Harvester frame and slide and barrel, you've got a true collector's item, and definitely a legacy piece that you can pass down from generation to generation. That's one thing that I really love about the older 1911s and all steel firearms as a whole. Those are, they're truly what I would call a legacy firearm, something that you keep in really good condition, and you pass down from generation to generation to generation. You look at a polymer framed gun, and it's, for a lack of a better term, it's a throwaway gun. You spend $500 for a Glock, and it's a beautiful gun, but it's just a Glock. It's not a legacy firearm, something that you buy with the intention of collecting and passing down from generation to generation. It's more of a utilitarian tool, something that you're going to use and you're going to abuse and wear out. Whereas, a 100-year-old 1911 that came from World War I or World War II, that's truly a legacy firearm that you're gonna keep up, and you're gonna maintain that firearm and pass that down as a collector piece from generation to generation. Let's see what else we've got. Ken Garrett, he said, Robbie, do you build custom 1911s? If so, what is the turnaround time? I've been building, that was actually how I cut my teeth in the firearms world, was when I started shooting competitively back in the late 90s, was with 1911s. And that was the first firearm that I started building. And I've been building 1911s and 2011s for 20 something years now, and truly understand the ins and outs of those firearms. And he said, what's my turnaround time for one? And the honest question is, it really depends on what you want, what kind of frame you want, what kind of slide you want, what kind of barrel you want. Are the parts available? It truly could be anywhere from 3 or 4 weeks to 3 or 4 months, just depending on the parts that you choose for the firearm, what kind of finish you want on it. It's a black nitride finish, you want a PVD finish, you want a parkerized or Cerakote finish. Cerakoting, which I don't really recommend for 1911s, just because of the close tolerances with those firearms. Cerakote actually builds up a thickness and can cause clearance issues with a 1911. So I don't recommend Cerakote for 1911s at all. Which is one of the, if I'm going to drift off and chase a squirrel right quick, one of the big things that I think Springfield Armory missed on with their DS pistol, that pistol should be black nitrided or PVD finished and not Cerakoted. I don't understand why they went the Cerakote route with that gun. They should have black nitrided or PVD finished that gun. They would have been able to produce more parts in a quicker manner, had closer tolerances, better accuracy, better reliability and dependability. The Cerakote is just a bad option for that gun. So that's me. I'll climb off my soapbox now and continue on with my questions from you guys. I'll be positive mostly says, I don't believe it's hanging up. I checked that. I'm wondering if it could be the return spring. It's possible it could be. Before I looked at the trigger return spring, I would look at, in a P80, I would look at the channel liner. The channel liner, in a lot of cases, especially if the gun has been Cerakoted or nitrided after the channel liner was installed, it'll shrink the channel liner and cause the channel liner to bind on the striker. So the first thing that I would do is remove the channel liner from the pistol and try it without the channel liner in it. If it works fine without the channel liner, then you know that you need to open up the tolerance on your channel liner inside so it doesn't bind on your striker and cups and spring. But generally, the trigger return spring would be one of the last things that I would check. You've got some other issues that are going on with that firearm other than the trigger return spring holding the gun out of battery. Now, you may see that as when you rack the slide slowly and the trigger is pulled to the rear, it won't go all the way forward. You let go of the trigger return spring, releases the trigger, and everything moves forward. The reason that it moves forward is because the striker is binding inside the slide on the channel liner and is holding the slide to the rear. So when you release the trigger, it's allowing the slide and the striker to move forward, where if you pull the trigger, you'll probably see the slide move to the rear slightly, where it's being pulled back out of battery. So check your channel liner first. Eddie Ramirez, he says, when firing my AR, after a few rounds, the rifle cycles the next round, and I go to fire again, and all I hear is trigger click and nothing. Thoughts? So you could be running into several issues. It could be, more than likely, it is the bolt not going all the way into battery. If you pull the trigger on an AR-15 and you just get a click, generally that means that the bolt hasn't went all the way into battery and cammed into place and locked into place. The bolt is back out of battery slightly, which leaves a gap in between the bolt and the bolt carrier and doesn't allow the firing pin to move all the way forward to hit the primer, which is a good thing. It's a safety feature with that firearm that prevents it from firing out of battery. But if it's not closing all the way, more than likely you've got a out of battery issue. So I would start with checking your bolt carrier, your bolt and bolt carrier. Make sure your gas rings are separated, that there is a 45-degree separation between each of your gas rings. If you've got one of the single gas rings in it, one of the spiral lock gas rings, take it off, stretch it as much as you can, and then throw it in the garbage and replace it with 3 individual gas rings and space them 45 degrees apart. The spiral lock rings are absolute junk in an AR-15. I've seen, and AR-10s as well. I've seen more cycling issues from gas rings, those spiral lock gas rings, than I have anything else. Take those things out of your guns, throw them away, replace them with the standard 3 rings, and that should help out quite a bit. Space them 45 degrees apart. Check your gas tube. If you've got a lot of rounds through your rifle, or if your gas tube is not centered properly in your upper receiver, it can rub on one side. And what it will do, there's a flare on the end of the head on your gas tube. And as the bolt goes into battery, if the gas tube is not centered, it'll wear one side of your gas tube flat. When that gas tube gets worn flat on one side, it allows gas to leak out of it, and you get a inconsistent gas bleed off into your bolt carrier group because of the leakage that you get with that flat's worn. And then sometimes you'll get a bolt that cycles properly. Sometimes you'll get a bolt that short strokes, and you'll get a double feed, or you'll get a bolt over base feed, or you'll get a feed on an empty chamber. And then sometimes you get one where it just comes back enough that it won't even extract the case. It'll pull the case out of the chamber and put the empty case back into the chamber. So check your gas rings. That's one of the big things. Check the gas key on top of your bolt. Make sure the gas key is torqued correctly, that neither of the screws on top of the bolt carrier group are loose. But those are generally the things that I see that cause issues with AR-15s. It's either a loose gas key, a worn out gas tube, or the gas rings are worn out. But check those. If you still have issues, give me a holler and I can help you. David Frost says, Follow up looking at the Savage 110 Hunter with a Magpul stock. Thank you for answering my question. Awesome experience with the boys and info on the caliber. The Savage 110 Hunter is a great rifle. The only negative that I have to it, some people like the AccuTrigger, trigger, some people don't. There's great aftermarket alternatives if you want a different trigger for it with or without the Accu style trigger. The Savage Axis rifle is another great one that you can buy that doesn't have the Accu trigger, but there are great aftermarket alternatives. Timony makes a great aftermarket alternative for the Axis. So if you want to replace the trigger in that and get a really good 1.5 to 3 pound trigger, Timony makes a great one for the Axis. And then there's several companies that make outstanding triggers for the Model 110s. But that may be really the only thing that you might want to look at changing on that rifle is the trigger if you can't get it adjusted down as light as you want. I'll be positive mostly says, I'm looking forward to the P80 video. Thanks. I tell you guys, I see a lot of issues with the P80s that the guys just struggle with. And, little things like I was talking about earlier with the trigger bar binding and not allowing the trigger to reset properly and things like that. Those are going to be some things that I highlight in my next video coming up to really give you guys some ideas of what you need to do to be able to fix your pistol if you take it out and shoot it and it's not going into battery, or if you have a trigger bar that's not resetting properly, so you get a dead trigger where you shoot, you got to reset and the trigger just stays to the rear. So those are going to be some great little quick and easy fixes that you can check with your individual firearm. Semper Gumby channel. And hey, I just want to give a shout out to my buddy Ben at Semper Gumby channel. He sent me an awesome t-shirt a couple of weeks ago with the Semper Gumby logo on it. If you guys haven't checked out his channel, you should absolutely check it out. But great content, great t-shirts, great sweatshirts. I think he's sold out of his hoodies right now. I got to get one of those from him. But check out his channel. But he said, Robbie, thank you for all that you do and your information that you put out. MZ is older than dirt, LOL. So MZ, I don't know MZ, but hopefully he gets to make it to the gathering and I get to meet him. But awesome guys. I love to see the chats and the comments and stuff over here on the side. Semper Gumby channel says, I guess I can't buy you lunch at Taco Casa since you're making fitness changes, LOL. Listen, Semper Gumby, if you come down here to South Carolina and offer to take me to Taco Casa, I will not turn you down. Okay, there are exceptions to everything in life, and Taco Casa is one of those exceptions with friends. I promise you, if you come down, I will make that exception for you. N.E. Cummins says, do you offer replacement barrels for the TP9 SFX Rival Dark Side in stainless steel? Right now, we're not doing barrels for the SFX Rival series firearms, but that is something that we've had several people ask us about, and I think we're all going to look into that. I think there's an opportunity there for some really good high quality aftermarket barrels, and that's going to be a project that we look into in the future. MZ Hockey 12 said, oh, hey, Robbie, did the AFT kidnap Such? No, the AFT did not kidnap Such. He had he's been going to a dojo for karate for the last several months, and he had he was testing up on one of his belts tonight. So he had a late class tonight testing up on one of his belts. That's the reason that my little guy couldn't be here with me tonight. Jordan Suarez says, what do you use to keep rust off all your rifle barrels on lowers and whatnot? Jordan, so for my rifles that stay in my safe, there's a few different things that I do. One, all of my safes have what's called a goldenrod or a dehumidifier in my safe. And that helps to minimize the moisture that's inside my safes. But also, anytime that I'm storing a firearm, putting a firearm into my safe, any of the carbon steel parts that are on that firearm, I wipe them down with a light coat of oil, just to help prevent rust and moisture issues. If you've had a firearm that you've been out, say you're a duck hunter, right? You go out, you're duck hunting, your boat breaks down, you end up having to use your shotgun as a paddle to paddle your boat back to shore. And I know some of you guys are laughing, but listen, it happens. All right. You don't have a boat you don't have an oar in the boat, or you've only got one oar and you really need two. That shotgun becomes a really nice oar really quickly after you unload it, obviously. But when you get back to shore, now you've got a soaking wet shotgun that's been in, swampy water, brackish water, maybe even salt water. And that can rust and corrode your firearm really quickly. One way that you can protect your firearm to keep it from rusting after it's been in an environment like that is to spray it down with WD-40. Now, WD-40 is not a cleaner. WD-40 is not a lubricant. But what WD-40 does do is it displaces water. It is a water displacing oil. So you can spray your firearm down, outside of it, the inside of it. Don't forget your magazine tube. That's one thing that I see a lot of guys do. They clean everything on the gun except their magazine tube. Take your cap off and spray WD-40 down in your magazine tube as well. And that WD-40 will displace any water that's inside your firearm and keep your firearm from rusting. Just a quick little pro tip on that. One of the big areas too, if you've got like Remington 1100 or some shotguns like that have a recoil spring tube that's in the buttstock itself, is to disassemble the gun and spray WD-40 down into the spring housing to prevent rust down inside your spring housing. I've had some of those that the tube and the spring were rusted almost completely in two from saltwater exposure. So that's one area that you really want to make sure you protect. But WD-40 makes a great temporary alternative to spray on your firearm as a water displacing oil to get the water off of your gun and prevent it from rusting. But once you store your firearm, I like to clean mine really well and lubricate them with a 30 weight synthetic engine oil. I don't buy a lot of the gun oils that are on the shelf. I think a lot of them are snake oil. I just use a good 30 weight synthetic engine oil for cars. I buy it by the quart and it lasts me a year or more. I clean a lot of guns. I go through a lot of guns. But 30 weight synthetic engine oil for a car works really well on your guns. Ken Garrett says, do I just contact you at the shop to talk details concerning a 1911? Yep, Ken, you can give me a call at the shop, 864-269-1212, or you can send me an email, Robbie, ROBBIE, at wheatonarms.com, and I'll get back to you on either one of those and help you out with your 1911. Brian W. says, Robbie, is it a good idea to carry a lighter grain 45 ACP than a heavier grain? Brian, when it comes to a handgun, for me personally, the heavier the better. And I'll tell you my logic behind that. A handgun does not produce enough velocity to create a lot of hydrostatic shock inside the human body. It doesn't create a huge temporary wound channel like you see with a high-powered rifle, 5.56, 308, whatever. It doesn't create that ballooning effect inside the body like you see with a high-powered rifle. A handgun generally will stop a threat in one of several ways. Either you hit the T-box in the head, you hit a vital organ, the heart or the spine, or you break the pelvis and stop someone from being able to move. And then blood loss is your other option. And generally, for the majority of people, blood loss is how you end up stopping most threats. The T-box in the head is very small. It's very difficult for most people to hit. The heart area is, kind of center mass. Most people tend to shoot either really high or really low and miss the heart area just because they don't understand exactly where it's at with a shirt on someone. It's one thing that I recommend you doing if you're practicing is set your targets up with a T-shirt on them and shoot the target with a T-shirt on it to see where you're actually hitting when you don't have an aiming box. It's very enlightening where you actually aim and index your handgun. But the heart lung area is generally an area that most people miss. Spine is very small once again. Pelvis is one of your larger areas, but most people don't aim for the pelvis. They tend to aim, kind of center mass and hit either really high in the extremities or really low in the abdomen. But blood loss is how you stop most threats. So your handgun doesn't create any hydrostatic shock. It doesn't disrupt organs or anything. Your hollow point ammunition expands some and creates a little larger exit wound than it does an entrance wound if it exits at all. Me personally, I carry ball ammunition in all of my handguns, all of my defensive handguns. And there's a lot of people out there that'll be like, oh, you're an idiot, blah, 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 over penetration, this, that. I want somebody, if I have to shoot somebody in a defensive situation, I want them leaking from 2 holes every time I pull the trigger. That's the entrance hole and the exit hole. All right. I'm going to be cognizant of what's beyond the target when I have to shoot someone. But I would rather them leaking out of 2 holes than out of 1 hole every time I pull the trigger. I want to disrupt bone. I want to disrupt organs on the front side and on the back side anytime I have to shoot someone. All right. So for me personally, I prefer the largest, heaviest projectile that I can possibly get for whatever caliber it is firearm that I'm carrying. If I carry a 9mm, I'm carrying a minimum of 147 grain full metal jackets in it. If I'm carrying a 40 caliber, it's 180 or 200 grain. If I'm carrying a 45 ACP, it's a good old fashioned 230 grain ball. It's like the old saying from World War I, everybody falls to ball, right? It works, and it's worked for well over 100 years. It's the difference between getting hit with a grain of sand versus a softball at 850 foot per second. Softball is going to leave a mark. Grain of sand might scratch you. So it's just kind of a super easy analogy for you to look at. But yeah, heavier is always better in my opinion. MZ Hockey 12 said, when I met you last October at Suits Nation, we had lunch together. I'm sorry, bud, but I don't recognize your screen name. Please send me an email with a picture of you so I can recognize you and know exactly who you are. But if you're in the area again, I look forward to seeing you again, and we'll grab lunch again. Justin Hopkins says, with the new ATF rules in mind, would a pinned and welded suppressor be a workaround? Justin, I've had a lot of people ask me that question in the last week or two, and the answer is yes. A pinned and welded suppressor, just like a pinned and welded muzzle brake, is a workaround. If you've got a 12.5-inch barrel and you pin and weld a suppressor onto it, and that suppressor comes to 16 inches or more, then that firearm it's a rifle. There's no, you totally avoid the whole arm brace thing, the buttstock thing, the SBR thing. You pin and weld that suppressor onto it, and you've got a 16-inch firearm. And for me, I think that is one of the best options to go with versus going with an SBR, simply because if I've got an AR-15 with a we'll call it a 10.5-inch barrel, and I pin and weld a suppressor on it, and now I'm at 16.5 inches. I'm over the rifle length barrel. I'm over the overall length of 26 inches. The good thing is with a suppressor, I can take a suppressor into any state in the United States that it's legal in. Throw it in the back of my car, in a backpack, or in a gun case, whatever, take off and travel with it anywhere that I want to go. That same firearm with a 10.5-inch barrel that's now SBR, I have to register and file paperwork with the ATF and wait for approval to come back before I can take that firearm out of my home state that it's registered in. And for me, I travel a lot. To have a rifle with a suppressor on it that's 16 inches that I can take anywhere is much more beneficial for me than a firearm with a 10.5-inch barrel that I can't take out of my own state. So for me, that was one of the big reasons why, and for a lot of other guys, why the pistols were so popular, is you could build an AR pistol or an AK pistol or whatever, any type of pistol with an arm brace on it, and you could travel anywhere in the country that firearm was legal in. Now, with this new ruling, that firearm is now considered an SBR, and you have to request permission from, Uncle Greedy over here before you can take that firearm out of state. I don't like having to request permission to take something that I own from one state to another, whether it's from hunting or a shooting competition or a gun show or whatever that I'm going to. I don't want to have to ask permission to take that to another state to use it. So for me, pinning and welding a suppressor onto that to where I can still travel with it anywhere that I want to go is absolutely the way to go. Ken Garrett says, what are your thoughts on Ballistol? I think Ballistol is a great lubricant for firearms, especially if it's something that you use on a regular basis. Ballistol seems to build up a thickness on your firearm. And, the firearms that I've used that guys have used Ballistol on a regular basis have a really, really slick, really smooth action. Ballistol is something that I definitely recommend. It's a great, great firearm lubricant. Toxic Element 115 says, I've been thinking about getting my 1911 Cerakoted, but I've been a bit reluctant. I'm worried about it affecting the fit of the gun. What do you think? Toxic Element 115, you were right on the money. Cerakote will absolutely affect the fitment of your firearm. If it gets into any of the critical lockup areas, slide to frame fit, upper lugs to slide standing lugs on the bottom of the gun, barrel bushing, any of those areas will affect the lockup on that gun and cause you reliability issues. When it comes to a 1911, if you're wanting to have it refinished, I recommend either a black nitride finish or a PVD finish. And we can help you with both of those. Just give me a call or shoot me an email, and we can get you set up to have any of those finishes done. But Cerakote for me, especially with a 1911 style pistol that has a lot of really close tolerances, Cerakote is not a go-to finish for those firearms. Jordan Suarez says, sorry to ask about rust again, but what do you recommend to take off a little rust spot? What do you use to get it off in process? Thanks so much for your time. Justin, I tell you, for me, I'll give you guys a little pro tip when it comes to removing little rust spots from your firearm. Get a copper penny, not a newer penny, but an older, like a wheat penny. Take a copper penny and rub the rust with that copper penny. The edge of the copper penny will rub the rust right off of your barrel or slide or whatever. And then take some Hops number 9 copper solvent and rub your slide with the copper solvent. The copper solvent will remove the copper scratches that you put on your slide, and then all of the rust and the copper will be removed. And depending on how big the area is, if it's just a little spot, that you won't see anything at all. If it's a larger area, then you're going to see a little bit of a silver spot where you rub that, and it removed the copper and the rust and took it down to the bare metal. And at that point, you can take some Birchwood Casey Cold Blue on a Q-tip and rub that area with some Birchwood Casey Cold Blue and cold blue that area to where it looks like it's never had any kind of rust on it whatsoever. Make sure if you use the cold blue that you put some water on the slide afterwards to deactivate the acid in the blue. Dry that off and then go back and put some oil on it, and then you'll never be able to see that you even had a rust spot on your firearm. Bailey's Guide Service says, hey man, can I ask you a question? Yes, you can. That's why I'm here. Shoot it down in the comments and I'll help you out. Down below, he says, what do you think about the new YouTube rule about you can't show adding new parts to a gun? Personally, I think that it is absolutely ridiculous. There's and it depends. Sometimes you can. It's weird. Sometimes I can do a video that shows me installing different parts on a firearm, and YouTube is completely okay with it. They approve it. They monetize it. They publish the video. Everything's great with it. Sometimes I can take a firearm that comes from the factory with a handgun with a red dot sight already installed on it from the factory OEM, and YouTube will demonetize the video and won't allow me to make any money whatsoever on that video. So it's very arbitrary as far as what YouTube allows, what YouTube doesn't allow, what they approve, what they don't approve. I think it really depends on what content reviewer they have that is actually looking at your videos at the time. There's some that are that understand what you're doing and understand the rules of YouTube very well and will push your videos through because they fall under all the terms and conditions. There's some some reviewers that look at it, and if it has the word firearm in it, then it's a no-go no matter what you do. So it's very arbitrary with what those guys do and how they do it. It makes anybody that publishes videos on YouTube sometimes make you want to pull your hair out because of the frustration trying to do the right thing and publish the right thing and follow their rules. And it's hard to follow their rules sometimes when even they don't follow their own rules. I'll just leave it at that. Got an email from MZ Hockey 12 says, check your email. Hey, bud, I'll do that as soon as I get off, and I'll reply back to you in just a little bit. JJ Griffin says, explain again with a 1911 and brass ejection pattern. So 1911s, there's a couple of things that affect there's three things really that affect the ejection pattern of a 1911 and the brass coming out of a gun. One is going to be the extractor tension. More extractor tension or less extractor tension, and it really depends on the caliber of the firearm. If it's 9mm, 10mm, 40, 45, whatever. Basically, the larger the caliber, the looser the extractor, the smaller the caliber, the tighter the extractor is kind of an easy way to explain it in layman's terms. 9mm generally have a lot more extractor tension than a 45 ACP to get the same type ejection pattern or extraction pattern. As far as ejection out of the firearm, where you want the brass to go. If you want the brass to go at 11 o'clock, at 9 o'clock, or straight across at 3 o'clock, or even lower, all of that's done with the face of the ejector. So you buy an ejector that goes in your 1911, all of your Gunsmith blank ejectors are going to be flat on the face. You undercut that ejector and change the angle on the face of the ejector to change the location of the impact on the rim of the case, and that changes where the case ejects out of the ejection port. Generally, the higher the contact point on the ejector, the lower the ejection path. The lower the contact point, the higher the ejection path. So basically, if you've got a flat ejector, it's going to throw the brass straight up or just a little off to the side. As you undercut that ejector with a little 45-degree angle, that raises where the ejector contacts the brass first, and that lowers the ejection path. So I hope that answered your question a little bit. Brian Benton says, Robbie, what is your recommendation for a truck gun, shotgun, or rifle for someone that travels a lot in the Carolinas? For me personally, I'm a rifle guy. All of my cars have an AR-15 in them. They used to have AR-15 pistols. Now they have AR-15 rifles in them with 16-inch barrels. But, I like having the magazine capacity of the AR. I like having the extra magazines from the AR. They're small enough, they're light enough, and they're cheap enough that I don't mind sticking one behind the seat and worrying about it getting scratched and beat up. So I'm a big proponent of having an AR-15 rifle behind the seat of all my vehicles. Boyd Lee says, what's your take on home defense 410 shotgun versus 22 rifle? That's a tough one. The 410 is a great caliber, kind of limited as far as ammunition selection. There's some birdshot, there's buckshot, there's slugs. Most of your 410s are either going to be single shot or, there's a few pumps and semi-autos out there, but not a whole lot, and then some bolt actions as well. I personally, if I had a choice between the two, I'd probably go with the 22 long rifle just because of magazine capacity and the ability to have extra rounds and extra magazines. 410 is a great round, but it's a very kind of pigeonholed round as far as what you can do with it. So for me personally, I would lean toward a semi-automatic 22 rifle, probably with some CCI mini mags I think those are some of the best, most reliable, consistent 22 ammunition available on the market. Hey guys, it's ran a little over an hour tonight. It's 8:35, but hey, I just want to say thank you so much for all of you stopping by, all of your great questions tonight. I really enjoyed it. You know, it's been fun flying solo. Sorry that you had to stare at my head a little bit while I was looking down at the computer, looking at some of the questions, but I really appreciate all of you tonight stopping by, saying hey, and your great questions. And for those of you that didn't get to catch this video live, it will be published on our channel in the next day or so you can catch it on the rewind. But thank you all once again for stopping by. Make sure you share it with your friends if they haven't got to check us out and see some of our content that we do. Make sure you share this video with your friends. I'll catch you guys next time on January the 20th with my buddy Such, who's right here. Can't see him, but I promise you he's here. But we'll catch you on the 20th of January from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock Eastern Standard, and we'll see you then.